I recorded the audio for this once already and then it deleted it. So here we go. Okay, I have my Google Drawing doc open and ready to go. As you can see, I have it titled, so I will be able to find it. It's called Ms. B. Kehinde Wiley Inspired Artwork, so it has my name and the project that it is. I will be able to find it on my Google Drive very easily. Okay, I am going to get started working on my mosaic. If you remember what I said in class a couple days ago, this gridded space is our workspace, right? So anything that's outside of there is not going to be seen later. I'm even going to change the background color to like an orangey color so that it's a little bit easier to see on my computer. I would recommend waiting until the very end to change your background color. All I did was right click and then scroll down to background, but now it's a little bit easier to see where my picture space is on my screen. Okay, so the first step was to input a picture of the person that I wanted to create my portrait of. And we had a couple different options to do that. As you can see, I'm going to click on this image tool at the top, insert image. You can upload a picture from your computer, you can search the web, or you can even take a picture using the camera on your computer. I'm going to use the search the web tool, but I know some of you guys wanted to do self-portraits, so the camera option would be really great for that. So I'm going to search the web for a picture of Mae Jemison. I'm going to type her name in, and I'm going to click on the picture that I want to insert. Once I click on it, I should see a little blue check, and then I can just hit the insert button. That one didn't work, so I'm going to try it again. Search the web, Mae Jemison, and then click on the picture that I want and hit insert. And then it should put that picture in there, and now I can see it. So the size that this picture is right now is kind of small. I want to make it bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag on the corner of my picture, oops, sorry guys, so that I can make it bigger. If you have a really big picture, it makes it easier to work on the mosaic. So right now I'm working on my placement and the size of my picture. I'm making it bigger, and you can see I like clicking and dragging on the corners because that makes it bigger in proportion to the picture, so it doesn't look stretched out. You're gonna see that if I click and drag on one of the sides or on the top, it kind of stretches out the picture in just a second. But if you use the corners, it makes it look kind of better. Okay, so I'm just making sure that I have a nice big portrait that I can work with, and it fills up most of my picture space. So look, see, I just dragged it out on the corners and it made it kind of wonky looking. So I'm going to make it nice and big, and then once that picture is big enough to take up most of my picture space, I'm actually going to crop the picture, which means cut out extra bits so that it's a little bit easier for me to understand what's actually part of my picture space and what is not in my picture space. Okay, so in order to crop it, I just double clicked on my picture and it added these little black lines on the corners. And I'm going to click and drag those just to the edge of my picture space. And I know that it's at the edge of my picture space because I can see that there's a red line that pops up. So now there we go. And then I just hit the enter button. And that's going to delete all of that extra stuff at the bottom. So this picture that I'm going to be working on is mostly her face and her shoulders and a little bit of her helmet. Okay, so now my picture is all set. I like where it is in my picture space. It's pretty centered. If you don't want yours in the center, then you can move it around. That's up to you. And I'm going to get started working on my mosaic. first thing I want to do is I want to zoom in. So I hit the magnifying glass button and I'm zooming in. So it's nice and big. Then I'm going to change my line tool to the polyline tool so that I can make shapes. And I know some of us were having some difficulty with this, so make sure you are paying attention here if you were having some trouble with this. Click on the polyline tool. I'm going to use the polyline tool to follow the contour line or outline or outside line of her hair. I'm going to start with her hair. And I'm just following along that line. So I'm going to start right over here and I'm going to click and drag it and then click just once. Look at what happens when I click twice. It turns it into this line, and that's not what I want. I want it to turn into a shape. So that's why it's really important that you just click once. So I undid that line that I made. I click once and I drag it, and then I click just once, and then I drag it again, and then I click again and drag and click and drag, and then I made a shape. And I just need to bring it back to that first point I made to close the shape. So now I'm going to put a little bit of a gap in between and make a new shape. So click and drag, click, drag, click and drag, and there we go. Now I have two shapes to make up her hair. I'm going to keep going until I fill up that entire space with these little shapes. You want to make sure that your shapes aren't too big. So you should have, I don't know, it's hard to tell when we're on the computer. You should have, let's say, at least 20 shapes on their head. Something like that. And have a nice gap in between. My shapes aren't too big or too small. If I make them too small, it gets kind of hard to make those shapes. And then sometimes it turns into that weird line tool again. Okay, I'm going to fast forward through the rest of me filling up her head or her hair, and then I will come back and show you how to select multiple shapes and change their color. Okay, so now I finished filling up her hair with all of these different mosaic pieces, and we're going to work on changing the colors of them so that it's the color that I actually want it to be. In this case, I want her hair to look black, so I'm going to work on changing that. If you remember, we said that you can click on the bucket tool to change the inside color, and then the pencil tool will change the outside color, the outline. But you can see that I have a lot of different shapes that I want to select. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one shape and then press the Shift button, hold down the Shift button, and click on the next shape. And as long as I hold down the Shift button, I can select as many shapes as I want. I need to make sure that I'm holding down the Shift button because look at what happens if I let go. Only this one shape is now selected. But once I hold down the Shift button and click on all of the shapes that I want to include and that I want to change, I can just shift and click and click and click. And I'm going to select all of the pieces that make up her hair, and I'm going to change them all to be the same color. Okay, there we go. I'm going to change the inside color to black, and the outside color was already black, so I don't need to change that. So now that's looking pretty good, but it's a little bit difficult for me to tell exactly what it looks like. I'm going to hit that fit button, which means that the picture fills up my screen kind of perfectly and I can see all of my picture space. Then I'm going to make sure that my background picture is selected with the arrow tool. Okay, so I have the arrow tool selected. I clicked on the picture. I can see that the picture is selected because there's the blue line around it. And then I'm going to click on a button that says Format Options. I can't see it on my screen right now, so I know that it's hidden behind these three dots. If you see the button that says Format Options, click on that. And if you don't, then click on the three dots until you do see Format Options. I am going to go down the list to the button that says Adjustments, and we're going to focus on the one that says Transparency. So transparency is how much we can see through an object. Right now, it's all the way on the left-hand side, which means that it is not transparent at all, and that's called opaque, and we can't see through it. But as I drag it towards the right side, it slowly disappears into the background. And then I get a really nice view of just the mosaic tiles that I created. I'm going to zoom in on this piece right over here because there's kind of like a little bit of a big gap. And maybe I want to make that gap look a little bit smaller. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my tool to the arrow tool. So click on the arrow tool and then select the shape that you want to change. I want to work on changing this triangle piece. So I'm going to click on the arrow tool and then click on my triangle piece. I know it's selected because there's that blue box around it. I'm going to double click on that triangle now. And now I can see that there are these purple lines around the edges with dots where I made each of the points of my shape. What I can do now is click and drag those dots to anywhere I want it to go. So I can move it over and that will kind of shrink that gap. I can stretch it all the way out over there. Make it look kind of weird. I'm going to bring it back down there though. But yeah, so you can change a shape after you've created it. Not like 100% or not like to a completely new shape, but you can change it quite a bit. So that's one way for us to edit our picture. I'm going to make my picture opaque again so that I can see it. And I'm going to work on her face now. There's a lot of details of her face that I want to make sure that I include. So I'm going to click on the polyline tool, select that, and I'm going to start working on that now. I am going to start by following along the contour or the outline of her face, and I'm going to leave out her eyebrow because I want to make that a different piece, right? So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to go just up to her eyebrow and then close that shape. Now I'm going to try to make that shape of her eyebrow. I think it'll be helpful if I zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to use the polyline tool to kind of trace around the outside of her eyebrow. And then when I go to color these shapes, I'm going to make sure that I make her eyebrow a different color, and that'll help you to really differentiate or see the differences between the different parts of her face. Now I'm following along with her eye, so I'm looking at the outside. You can see these spaces are getting kind of small, and oops, I accidentally double-clicked there, so it closed that shape on its own, but that's not quite how I wanted it to look, so I'm going to undo it and redo the shape. Remember, I'm just clicking once. If I double-click, then it finishes that shape for me, and that's not what I want. I want to make sure that I close that shape by joining it each time. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm going to zoom out. And then I'm going to go back to the polyline tool and keep on working. And I'm going to keep doing that until I fill up her whole face. So I'm filling in these tiny areas. This is getting a little small, so I'm getting a little risky over here, but I think it'll be okay. Okay. So I'm just following along with the outline of her face. And I think what I can do is I think I can speed it up here. So I'm going to finish all of these different pieces, and you can kind of see how I piece together all of the parts of her face. And then at the end, I'm going to work on making all of the different parts of her face a different color. And you'll see exactly how I do that. But I think I can speed through it. So good luck, everyone. You're off to an awesome start, and I can't wait to see what your mosaics look like.